Welcome to the Behind the Curtain podcast, your real-world guide to real estate investment and property management.
In this episode, we'll be discussing the 1031 exchange, what it is, and the proposed legislation change that will impact property investors. In our neighborhood chat, Brett tells us about his weekend trip in East Tennessee and a new project he's been working on there. We'll finish by talking about the ongoing title theft problem and what steps the courts need to put in place in order to protect homeowners.
All right, so let's go through the 1031 exchange proposed changes. Now, the only thing I don't know is what are the loopholes? This is something about loopholes from been in effect since 1921.
That's just what the media has been calling.
The media has been called loopholes.
They're saying that
they love those loopholes. Let's close those loopholes. The way these guys are making money, let's take that money away from them. Whenever they say close loopholes, that means you're making too much money and we're not going to allow that to happen anymore. That's what I take from it. So anyway, Biden's proposing changing the 1031 rules, which I still don't think he can do it by executive order because it's a tax impact. It's something that's got to be passed through Congress. I don't think it'll happen. There's a couple of Democrats that are kicking back on this $1.9 trillion Biden plan to begin with, and they still don't think it'll even come close to passing. For those of you who don't know, 1031 is the ability for you to, let's say you own 10 properties or say you own 2 properties in California worth $1 million, and you want to move, and I'm going to give you an example. One of my investors is doing this. He's selling that property. He's moving that $1 million to Memphis because he can buy 8 homes producing about $6,000 a month gross here with that $1 million versus the 2 properties he has. They're worth $500,000 and $400,000, something like that a piece, which he's getting $3,800 a month out of. So he's almost going to double his investment by moving that money.
Oh, yeah.
Because he can buy so much more. So what he's going to do is 1031 is where you sell that property and then you got 45 days. You put it into a 1031 exchange with a licensed agent who does 1031. And then you go out and you find like properties 45 days out of identifying. I think it's 60 days from there to close. If you do that, then there's no capital gains tax because your profit from those properties is tax exempt as long as you're investing into like properties. So for this gentleman, Michael, he bought these properties for $110,000. So he's going to probably end up pulling on one in particular about $300 something thousand out of it profit.
Wow.
Think of the capital gains hit on that.
Oh,
but if he rolls it in 1031 and then turns up and comes to Memphis and buys property here, that money's tax exempt. So Biden's plan is to eliminate the 1031 tax exemption for anything over $500,000.
Correct.
So for an investor like Mike, he would then get the 1031 credit up to $500,000, but the other $500,000 he's going to get eaten alive. Probably 30% of that money is going to go to the government for taxes. I'm just going to say it right now. I think it's the dumbest idea I've ever heard of. Because if you want to kill the real estate market, that's the best way to do it. Take an investor's ability away to continue to reinvest in real estate. I think it'll have an impact on our business. Not for the long term, as we discussed earlier. Long-term buy and hold, you'll be fine. But if you're 1031ing money today to buy new property, it's going to be detrimental because now I do see a way around this, and that is Mike could take these properties and sell them separately at separate times and 1031 each set of them and not have to pay tax on it. But that's just only going to cause more problems in the long run. So I personally believe it's a bad idea.
Well, so let's think about what the implications are of this proposal, moving forward. I think implication number 1 is that investors who are less nuanced, but less sophisticated in how they purchase and sell real estate, they're going to think that they should just hold the property that they own and not sell it because they're going to be afraid of that level of taxation. Mm-hmm. So I believe that the first effect of this proposal moving forward is that you're going to see a significant drop in the sale of real estate.
I think you're going to short term.
Significant.
If this passes, it's not going to take effect for a little while. So I would say that people that are considering selling and 1031ing,
sure,
get it done now.
Get it done now.
But
that's we were talking about panic.
Yeah,
the panic selling and the panic buying that's happening right now, and I think this is. I mean, this wasn't even on the radar until about a month ago.
Right.
But I believe that this is only going to encourage that panic selling and then that hard drop that you're talking about, at the end of the season this year.
What do you think Biden's, and I don't know, it's probably not even Biden's plan. It's probably someone else's plan.
Sure.
What do you think is the thinking is behind taking the one industry in this country that's booming, and it's benefiting everybody. It's benefiting renters. It's benefiting homeowners. It's benefiting investors. It's creating more jobs. I mean, the rehab industry has gone bananas. I mean, we have great. 3 contractors I know of that are just looking for contractors, people who go to work and help.
Right.
So what do you think the reasoning is behind crushing that? Is it short-sightedness, thinking that it's more taxation without thinking of the long-term repercussions of it, which is typically what some of these liberals do? They don't think about the long-term effect. They think about the short-term gain. Or do you think there's something more well thought out, which I'm going to giggle when I say that, well thought out in this plan?
Sure. I think obviously any legislation benefits somebody, right? So there's a special interest group, and it doesn't matter, what your political stripe is, you're going to have special interest groups that are influencing you to make certain decisions. So I haven't researched this enough to know which special interest group is benefiting the most. I can tell you that
I think it's a He-Man moneymaker haters club. They hate people that make money.
Yeah. Well,
I think it's that group.
It could be. It could also be that I think that one of the purposes of this proposal is to increase taxation, period. And I think it's going to be very, very short-lived. I believe that there are strategists and analysts for the federal government who have determined the amount of money that could be made in the short term for the federal government.
But that's the issue I have.
Sure.
And when I see a news reporter talk about the amount of increased tax revenue to the federal government, people have completely lost sight of the fact that we are the federal government. You and I are the federal government.
Sure.
That's our money either way.
Right.
So when they spend this $1.9 trillion, that's our money.
Sure.
When they screw up an industry to get more taxation, that is also our money.
Right.
Now, if I thought for a minute that money would benefit me, I'd probably be a little more open to figuring out a way to increase taxation without hurting businesses and hurting the economy.
Right.
But that money is going to go into the coffers, and then they're just going to spend it. It's not going to go anywhere to help anything. Exactly.
I totally agree.
So what's the point?
This is a part of the $1.9 trillion bailout bill that Biden has passed, right?
It hasn't been passed Congress. It'll never get passed.
Okay. So I think the point is he's trying to present a balanced proposal, right? So one of the ways that you can balance all of the spending is through the increase of taxation, right? So right now it's just on paper, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, it hasn't hit yet, but he does have there's a lot of gravity. There's a lot of weight to his decisions he's making right now. And he is quite capable of pushing his vision through.
But it's still got to pass Senate.
But the other thing that I wanted to say is that, it's obvious in these spending bills that the people that are paying for it are who are perceived to be wealthy, right? Like when you're looking at there are a couple of other items in this bill that
Mike isn't wealthy.
What?
Mike's not a wealthy guy. He owns a sign company, and he's worked hard and been smart with his money.
Yeah, he works very hard.
He didn't make a ton of money. He's not rich, but he's been smart with his investments. So now this legislation could be the key to undoing what he's spent the last 20 years building for retirement.
Sure.
Because he's self-employed. He doesn't have an employer dumping money in his 401k and paying for his insurance and all that bit. But this was his retirement plan. So it's going to greatly affect a guy like Mike. Big time. He's going to shut his investment opportunities down.
Sure. I think everything is a matter of negotiation, right? And I think that this initial proposal is Biden's way of saying, I'm going to start this as low as I possibly can at $500,000, right? Because there's tons of real estate all over America. I mean, tons of it. Most real estate probably sells for more than $500,000 if you think about it.
Yeah.
And so having said that, this would be an immediate tax on the sale of a property, basically completely liquidating the 1031 exchange benefit.
Right.
Boom, gone.
Well,
effectively shutting down 1031 exchanges completely.
Right. And I don't think it'll get that far. I think someone up in Capitol Hill has to have a sliver of common sense to realize this would be devastating to the economy.
Sure. Right.
And it won't immediately. Yeah, the coffers in Washington will look good, and they'll be able to say, well, look, we're balancing the budget and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But a year from now, when all of this starts catching up with us, it's going to have, I think, such a detrimental effect in this market.
Sure.
And in the real estate industry. And then that will begin to bleed out into all the other industries that feed the real estate industry. Appraisers and inspectors and remodelers, it's just going to have a wide-reaching effect. So I don't think it's going to pass. I hope it doesn't pass. I wish that we would get away from this thought process that, well, we don't know how to manage our checkbook, so we'll just tax the crap out of everybody and make up the difference.
Right.
How about we just sit down and be fiscally responsible first, and then if that doesn't work, if you can't balance it that way, then find ways to make up the difference instead of just saying, we're going to spend $10 trillion and then tax the crap out of what we call the rich to pay for it. We need to get away from that mentality. I think we're heading down a road right now that we're going to end up, unfortunately. Let me ask this question. Have we ever had massive tax increases in any sector of our business or America that has had a positive impact on our country and the average American? Is there anything we've done raising taxes on any sector of the world or our country, business, individuals, that has had a positive impact?
Do you know, not being the recipient of those tax dollars, I would have to say that I can't answer that question.
I'm trying to get to that point because there seems to be this thought that we can just keep raising taxes and tax.
I think we all look back. Let me answer the question to the best of my ability. I think we all look back at the FDR. What was the WPA?
The Voluntary Tax Program that was put in place, that is still in place today.
Well, sure, but I mean the improvement of infrastructure across the country,
sure,
the building of. I mean, I've been in these national parks, so have you.
Yeah. That
were put together by the jobless, you know.
But that was the right idea,
right?
When you tax and bring in another $5 trillion in taxes, and then you just piss it away,
sure,
and don't use it for what it should be used for, the long-term effects of that are bad.
Okay, so here's this. Going back to, I'll just kind of finish my point. I believe that this bill will be negotiated,
sure,
and I believe that there will be several things that will be stripped out. There will be new things that will be added in, new bridges with the names of governors and your local city hero and all the street name changes and everything. And so that's just going to happen anyway. All right. So what my gut tells me is that this concept of taxing 1031 exchanges above a certain dollar amount, I think that's going to be in the new bill. I think it may end up being over $750,000 or over $1 million.
I think it's going to have to get over $1 million.
Here's the other thing. I think there needs to be an income qualifier. If you're really going to do this, if you're really going to tax a 1031 exchange, I think that the net worth or the person whom you're taxing, I don't think it can be done if that person isn't technically considered wealthy, and then where do we set that?
Right.
So I believe that there need to be better qualifiers if you're going to tax someone, just like we do with income
sure,
tax, right? I mean, you don't tax me the same way you would tax a wealthy individual. You just, because I'm not wealthy, but I make, I'm taxed according to the amount of money that I make every year. So the question is, how do we, if we're going to increase taxes, how can it be a reasonable increase?
I have no faith in Washington because most of those clowns have been there for 40 years. They've never worked a real job. Right. They have people that cook for them and drive them around, and they live in this bubble, and they don't understand the day-to-day makeup that we are, right? The average American. So, and let's face it, today's investors, most of them, the average investor is just an average person. Right. Most of the ones that I have,
very much.
Most of them have day jobs, and they're starting their investment portfolios to build retirements for themselves. And I just think that we're making decisions out of haste and out of trying to fill a void that we created, tax money void, without thinking about how it's going to impact the average American. Right. And the average American is going to get crushed through this.
Right.
It's going to get to the point where people won't be able to afford to buy a home. Investors will stop buying rental properties. It'll have a negative impact. So call your senator today and tell him to, you fill in the blank.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if I would definitely say that that if this is something that you're opposed to, and you are fortunate enough to live in a place that is also in opposition, then yeah, your senator should be able to have a lot to say.
And now, Neighborhood Chat.
My partner Trey from Baton Rouge, y'all all met them. You met him when he came up for the investor summit. Glenn was supposed to go, but he couldn't go. So we're looking at container homes, which I didn't know a whole lot about them. So we went over to East Tennessee, Gatlinburg, and looked at some property in the mountains. And our goal is to you can put out container homes, nicely finished homes, cabins, rentals. Probably cost to build one out, 40 by 80 is like maybe $50,000. So, and you can buy the property because it's sitting on the side of a mountain for about $8,000 to $10,000 an acre. So you literally could put in a 40 by 80 tiny home cabin rental for less than $100,000. So the ROI is phenomenal. So we went over to look at property, went and toured a facility of a place that builds tiny homes. He had a couple of containers he built, and he actually has land next to his facility. It's called the Prairie. And people buy the tiny homes, and he puts them out there, and they pay $300 a month to rent the spot and live in their home. It's on wheels, so when they get done, they can just take off. So he let us go in one of them, a 40 by 80, completely finished out. And I walked in, I was so surprised at how much room it had. Because I'm thinking it's going to be like this little tiny cramped closet. And it was just amazing. So we're looking at putting two 40 by 80s with a 5-foot span between them built out. And then putting a 20-footer on top as the master bedroom with a balcony coming out over the first unit. And basically they put flat log siding on the outside of it, dark stained and breaks with the dark blue paint in the middle. It's just beautiful. Unbelievable. Tons of windows. So we're going to be looking at doing a project over there. I think our goal is going to be to put 2 of them down, put them in the cabin rental program, see what the cash flow is like, how many days per month it rents, so we can get a package together. And we're probably going to turn it into an investor program where investors can say, hey, I would love to buy one of those. So we'll build them and sell them to the investor and put them into Summit Cabin Rental, for a rental program and let them get a return on it. My goal is to ultimately just end up with 1 or 2 of my own that I can go rent and have a place to go. That's my goal. Other people have goals of making money and building this conglomerate tiny home company. I have no interest in that. I want to have one on my own that's paid for that I can go to anytime I want to.
Yeah,
I'll love it up there. Absolutely love it.
Oh yeah. We were up there actually March of last year, right? But like we were there. This is one of my favorite stories in the Smoky Mountains when Donald Trump came out and on television. He came out. He did. He right there. He just
cool your jets there.
All right, yeah.
He didn't come out of the closet.
He flipped his comb over into a side ponytail and said, I want to be known as, I don't know, fill in the blank. Anyway, so the point that I'm making is this. We were in the Smoky Mountains 14 months ago. This is what I was getting at. I know that your idea is going to work. And here's how I know it's going to work. And our listeners most likely have not been to the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. Okay, but
just gorgeous.
You have been to mountains in California, sure, out west, Nevada, whatever. And you know how these large condominium step-built complexes are built up the side of a mountain, right? To where everybody's got a front porch and everybody's got an overlook into the valley below. And those condominiums can be sold individually as timeshares or as private residences or held by, the building itself. So that is everywhere in the Smoky Mountains. I mean, you just see these condominiums and they're in these beautiful locations.
Oh, it's just such a beautiful scenery.
Oh my gosh.
And let me tell you, if you don't believe in God, you go to the Smoky Mountains and if you sit there and say God doesn't exist, there's something wrong with you. Right. That is, you get up there, it's so beautiful. But let me tell you this quick story. So we go up there, we don't know any contractors. We're going up there to just look at raw land and go meet this tiny home builder and look at kind of what he does and start understanding the concept. So we were supposed to come out Tuesday. So we leave, we get up, power goes off, we go through this horrendous storm, some of the roads wash out, we can't get down the mountain. Water's literally flooding the bottom floor of the cabin where the pool table and all that's at. I called, I can't remember her name, over at the rental place, Summit, and she says, look, y'all just stay as long as you need to. We had to cancel our meeting, postpone it. Stay as long as you need to. The roads are shut down. Don't, just be safe.
That's incredible.
So keep in mind, we didn't know how we didn't even know how to do the foundations here. I'm talking to Trey going, I don't even know how to start building one of these. We got to find somebody.
Yeah.
So anyway, the Summit Cabin Rentals calls back And she said, well, I had to cancel the guy that was going to come vacuum out the water and clean the gutters out and all that. He's going to show up tomorrow. Y'all are staying till tomorrow, so if you leave, just leave the key in the box if you go into town once the roads open up so he can get in. He came by yesterday morning, walked in, and casual conversation. He's a tiny home contractor who does container homes, foundation, and land clearing, and engineering for the foundations.
Wow.
So we found a one-stop shop guy who told us. We gave him the plans. He goes, I'll have you a bid tomorrow on what it's going to cost to finish this out, what the engineering is going to be. Told us all about the water service, the wells, and all that. So we drove out of there, and then Trey looked at me and goes, man, God works in mysterious ways.
That's right.
We went there with a sliver of a plan and left there with a solid plan, with the builder in place and everything. So it was just unique. It's like we ended up staying an extra day because of this storm and the water roads being washed out, which brought all these other people into our life the next day that we met that helped us take this plan to a bigger, finished idea. So yeah, it turned out to be a great trip. I'm excited about it. There's nothing that's going to happen overnight. It's going to be a unique program. Get a couple of them out and put them with Summit cabin rentals.
Okay.
We would need to run some numbers.
I'll be there. I'll take Richard.
We want to run some numbers.
Oh, and our wives.
Yeah, rent them out.
Sorry. Get
the cash flow going. Get what our cost to build it was, the foundation, the wells, and all. Just kind of get everything in line so we know. Look, we can put this out for $120,000. That's cost all in. It's going to rent, 20 days a month on average at this much. Here's your ROI. And then around that, build an investor package. So we can go to investors, say, hey, if you want a vacation rental that you can go to when you want to, but produces a 15% ROI, here you go. And then we'll bring investors in with cash that'll pay to build one for themselves. Another idea is we create an LLC and investors just pool their money in and share in the revenue and
build
sale
it on
revenue.
spec.
And build them on spec.
Yeah.
But then those investors get 2 weeks a year free. Just any cabin we have, just come use it. Give it to a customer, whatever you want to do.
Right.
So we're playing with a few ideas. But we're going to start with probably just 2 for about 6 months or so, and just till we see the cash flow and the maintenance and how often they rent. I think, personally, I think we'll be getting a lot of tree huggers from the West who love tiny homes. I don't want a tiny 500 square foot cabin. I'm not interested in that. It's going to be 1,200 square feet, couple of bedrooms and baths. That's probably the smallest we'll go. I looked at tiny homes that are the size of this room on wheels. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, to me, I'm not driving cross country to stay in the Smoky Mountains in a closet. I need a little more room than that. But, you can do so much with those containers. The designs are just amazing.
Remember, too, that we're dealing with a totally different generation. Tiny homes have been around for about 15, 20 years.
They're huge now.
As a popular thing, right. And they're probably, and I've seen some of them, by the way, up in the Smokies.
They're really cool.
Yeah, they're super awesome. So, Brett, I hate to say it, but we're not the current generation. No. So the current generation who would,
if they'll rent one of my tiny cabins.
Absolutely.
God bless them.
Yeah, come on out. Yeah.
So that's our plan. 16 acres, probably eventually have about, 18 to 20 total. We're going to have the bigger ones up on the ridge, and then down low we'll do like a little kind of a campground kind of thing where you have 8 or 9 tiny cabins close to each other that they can rent for cheap. And some people like the tight community, and other people, when I go to the cabin and go to the Smokies, I like to walk out on the balcony and look down into the valley and feel like I'm the only person in those mountains. And that, to me, is the experience of renting a cabin up there.
Yeah.
But other people like that, I want to be in a community where there's 5 or 6 cabins. You get to know your neighbors and hang out and stuff like that. So we're going to try to mix the 16 acres with a mixed use.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a really cool thing too that you could also do is have the area around your development, which is going to be a small development. We're not talking. It's like you can have it mapped to where it could be near walking paths and stuff like that. Because you stayed in the same.
I'm going to talk to the guy with the meth lab up top and the moonshine still and say, hey, can we use you as a tour spot?
There you go.
We'll take you up to Jake Lambett's moonshine still up at the top of that mountain there.
We'll just hire him as security.
He'll be good security.
Yeah, you just give him a couple
He's
of
a big boy.
rifles with
that is a
scopes.
Big. I guess he would be that guy was the epitome of everything you would think of some big country mountain boy who's grew up in the mountains, probably can live off the land.
Oh, sure.
Probably scary as hell. Just a tough guy.
Yeah.
So, I might talk to him. I guess if we decide to buy this property, I'll have to make the trip up the mountain to his house up there and say, hey, remember me? I'm just letting you know we bought it. You can keep your driveway. We're all cool there. Because the last thing I need is for him to start terrorizing the people in the cabins.
Well, when you're high, you have no idea what you're doing. So it's kind of scary.
All right. Well, so that's it.
That sounds really exciting.
Yeah,
I can't wait. I'll be one of your first customers.
It'll be a fun little project. So we'll see how it goes.
Awesome.
Okay, so let's get into kind of a strange situation here. The headline says the law needs to change. Woman says her property no longer belongs to her after someone filed a fraudulent deed. All you got to do is forge a quitclaim deed and file it, and title changes hands. Now, you can only do it if it's a house that's paid for. If it's got a lien against it, it can't be done. So in this story, a woman supposedly finds out that her home was no longer in her name. There's a forged signature on a deed transferring ownership to another person. And that's called, what do they call it? That's called
fraud.
But no, there's a name for it. The deed title fraud or title. I forgot the term they use for it. And this is real. This really happens. I mean, Glenn and I actually dealt with this in 2010 with a couple that came in. They were in foreclosure, and they tried to talk to the bank, and the bank wouldn't talk to them because the deed had been changed to someone else. Therefore, they were no longer, it was their home. They had the mortgage, or the husband had the mortgage on the property, but the Bank of America refused to talk to them because they'd been communicating with somebody else who transferred the deed and stole title to their property. And he was trying to go through the process of short selling and settling the loan with Bank of America so then he could evict them out of the home that he now owns and take possession of it. And Glenn and I had to deal with this. So this is a real thing. It happens. But my question is, Aaron, and you can give me your 2 cents on this, how in the world, with all the technology we have today, is it possible for this not to be caught? I've been in hundreds, thousands of closings, and you're signing 50, 60 documents that go to the federal government, go to, the Patriot Act and transfer of funds, and all these things have to happen in order for that deed to be filed and properly accepted and titled transfer. And I'm just curious, out of everything that we've done, how it happens.
As I read the article, I see that, and let's just talk about Memphis here for a second. I see that there are some older ways of recording deeds, okay? And we know, and this is not a slam on our court system, okay, but we know that the court clerk, the assessor's office, these offices are woefully understaffed, especially, I would say, in the last 15 years.
And why is that?
I think that there are only so many positions that are created, for the purpose of recording and the deeds, and I think that the city has grown so much, like doubled in size easily in the last 30 years. If you include the other municipalities that are around the city, right. The economy in Memphis has exploded. The population of Memphis has exploded. The geography of Memphis has also exploded. One of the things that has happened since the 1970s, really, is that there's been a lot of new construction infill inside of the city border.
Right.
Okay. And so what used to be, Memphis used to be this sort of like kind of country, like large country town, where it was just a huge land space, and there would be communities here and there, but there would be, actual land, often farmland, in between each individual community or neighborhood. And what's happened to that farmland is a lot of it has been filled in. And so now what you're seeing in Memphis is just bedroom community after bedroom community after bedroom community, just stacked side by side. So I think that the city offices, which actually govern and process the recording of these deeds, haven't grown enough to be able to handle everything. I think they have now. And I think that they've also integrated technology into those offices in order to be able to verify and to check certain things. So one of the things deeper into the article that I read is that there are a couple of representatives that are looking to change the law and the requirements of the persons who are filing new deeds, like quitclaim deeds, or there's another one I can't think of that you can probably think of, Brett, where name changing on these deeds occurs. And so, and I'll just read from the article here. There is an Antonio Parkinson, who's a Tennessee state representative, and he is suggesting that the registrar's office be provided more authority to verify the property filings before they're actually recorded. Okay, so what's happening is that there's information that's not being verified before these deeds are recorded. So right now, apparently, it's not a requirement of an employee at the assessor's office to check an ID. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I did not.
Okay, so apparently you can actually change the name on a deed or submit changes to a deed without having your identity verified. So they're looking to move to something that we all know and are very familiar with these days called two-step authentication or two-step verification of the identity of the person making that change. What that is going to do is it's going to slow down the deed recording process.
Right.
Okay.
Well, now they're doing it online.
Right.
There are title companies who have set up an account and can do it online. Maybe the answer would be for them to eliminate, if you're good at fraudulently signing a deed, and I guess you could figure out a way to file it online too. I guess that would make sense.
Well, that's where the two-step authentication would come into play. Right? Like, so you would have to, like with DocuSign, obviously we verify the email address of the sender
sure.
and we verify their identity. But even DocuSign is relatively light. It may be required that everything, my understanding is it is required that it be notarized now. Right. Mm-hmm. And so when I look at deeds, just you and I look at deeds all the time online, and we see the scanned images, and there's always a notary's stamp. Right.
Well,
so
there are some notaries out there that they would put a notary stamp on a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Mm-hmm. Right. And without truly verifying the documentation is correct. It's simple for someone to go get a fake ID and go to a notary and get it stamped. I don't know what the true answer would be, but I know they've got to figure out how to stop it. I think it falls on the county courthouse, right? For them to put steps in place to prevent the fraud from happening, because they're the ones that are doing the transferring of title and recording. So therefore, I think they need to spend the money and time to put those steps into place. I don't know how you would do that, other than possibly doing what the banks do and getting people's thumbprint, get their identification, get a copy of it, and have them put that little black thumbprint on the deed itself, so that when it comes out to be fraudulent, you've got someone's fingerprint that you can run.
Take the postal service. When you want to forward mail, even they know how to send out a packet to both addresses to say, hey, did you request this? The county could have a similar situation that when a deed transfer or whatever is triggered, it sends out a mailing to the actual physical address that they have to respond to within a fixed period of time. Otherwise, the whole process doesn't go through.
Yeah, I think it's steps. I think so. So for the listener, what our producer Richard was suggesting is that there be more verification processes added to the deed transfer process. And I honestly would agree with that. I think, like right now with closings, when there's an escrow, there is a wire confirmation email that is given to the buyer to make sure that they are confirming where the wire is going. The closing attorney is also involved in that. So the lender receives that notification. Right. The buyer sees the notification. The closing attorney agrees and says it's going into their account. I think they're the ones that actually originate. Yeah. Anyway, the point is right now there is a new fraud system that's put in place where they're verifying by email and alerting the party, the current owner, the name in which the deed is in, that there is a change that is about to occur with that deed. They did say that last year there were 34,000 property transfers. Mm-hmm. That is, for a small town like Memphis, and let's say that the county assessor's office has 35 employees, that's 1,000 property transfers per employee.
They don't say in the article if these were electronic transfers or if they were mail transfers or physical showing up, filing the paperwork at the courthouse. But in two of those steps, even on the electronic transfers, they could require someone imprint their thumbprint below their signature.
Sure.
Right? Title attorney, Chris over here, could be like, all right, sign right here. And then the final page, attestation of who you are, you sign it and you put your little black thumbprint underneath there. And now when it's filed, they've got your thumbprint. So if you're not who you say you are, the thumbprint's going to tell them who you are. So if there's a problem, they now can track back to who committed the fraud. Right now, they don't even know because, some guy, Tom Smith, signs a deed, has it transferred to some LLC in, India, and there's nothing you can do to change that because you'll never trace down who has it. But that'd be a way to do it.
Right.
Or if they physically come in. When I go to the bank and cash a check, at a different bank other than my own, that's what I do. I take my thumb and put it in a little ink and put it on the check. So now they've got my thumbprint.
Well, and I think I like that idea.
And if the FBI doesn't come storming in when I do that, I walk out with a sigh of relief.
Right. Well, one of the things I really like about the physical presence required is that it really will slow down and require physical identity. I mean, you're going to have to be a really good con in order to be able to.
If you use the thumbprint method, anybody can get an ink pad and put thumbprint on a document. So when you scan a document, send it to Shelby County for recording, which is what Title Assurance does. They do it online. If the acting parties have imprinted their thumbprint, it's on the document when it scans over. It's now in the record. So instituting something simple like that may detour some of these con men.
Right.
It's just easier to get a job.
Well, so my last point on this, the moment, and it really felt like within weeks of COVID shutting down in-person travel and in-person transactions, right? Like everything was done electronically. We began to see property crime happen because nobody wanted to be out. Like we all thought that this was going to be the zombie virus that was going to destroy humanity.
Right.
And so no one would get out. The banks were all closed. There was no in-person banking. Everything had to be done, by phone. We know that the courthouses were closed, right? So in order to transfer deeds, it had to have been done electronically for several months, right? And so opening that in-person back up is crucial for controlling this. And it also happened to be in the hottest real estate market in American history.
Right.
In any given 12-month period. Yeah, there has been, this is about fraud, people. So was there a lot of fraud? Was there electronic fraud because of this, because of COVID, because of not being able to look, people face to face, because of the notary that you're working with, maybe not being able to sit across the desk from you, hold your physical ID and verify, yes, this is who you are. Or
you're a con man and you just go get your notary certification.
Your fake notary. Yeah.
And you do it yourself.
Right.
Listen.
Not that hard.
When they say get it notarized, I get it. I'm not taking it away from these folks that are notaries that, work in banks and courthouses and so forth. It's an important position and title to have. But getting a notary stamp, just a notary stamp, in my opinion, is no way a good safeguard anymore. Because, 50 years ago, it was probably a good safeguard. Today, anybody can get a notary stamp and stamp it on a deed and sign and forge a name to it and file it. It's very, I'm sure from my perspective, it seems very simple to do.
Sure.
So I think there just needs to be other mechanisms put in place.
One last thing on this point for me is that Memphis is a very unique community. It's a very unique city here in the United States. And one of the things that makes it unique is it is a community full of normal people.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Well, no, just follow me on this.
Richard lives here.
Well, he chose to live here, though. I was born here, and I would consider...
Hey, I'm not normal.
That's what I'm saying. I said, don't go that far. I said, Richard lives here.
This is an area where I feel like government needs to be encouraged to control fraud. Because this is if you drive down this, if you take a 30-minute drive from one side of our city to the other, you're going to see people that are, the last thing they're thinking about is whether or not they're being taken advantage of or impersonated by someone else. They're not even thinking about it. They're just trying to get their bills paid. They're trying to go to work. They're trying to, they hope that the mail shows up, and so I would say that this is an area where local government definitely needs to step in and say, hey, we're going to make this system more complicated because we want to protect the average citizen.
Well, I think that falls down on the Shelby County's, is it the assessor's office that does the recording?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then it falls on his shoulders.
Sure.
And fraud under his watch is his responsibility. It's his job to take his annual budget and put mechanisms into place to protect the citizens that are filing transfer of deeds and titles at his office.
Right.
It shouldn't fall on anybody but him. And maybe with this story, that would spur him into action to try to look for. You can hire and contract a cybersecurity company to help put things in place to prevent fraud and do verifications, different types of verifications. And it's got to be coming from somewhere. So, it could be a simple thing as an email verification. Well, all of a sudden you get an email from, some guys in California on a house here in Memphis then that throws up a red flag. You contact the homeowners. Hey, by the way, there's a deed being filed from California under your name with your signature.
Right.
There's ways to do it. I think they just need to. The politicians need to get away from being the stars at the top of the chain and loving their social life as whoever they are, and get involved and do their job and protect the citizens.
Well, I think that's exactly what they're going to do, and these are Tennessee state representatives that are suggesting a state law change.
Yeah.
So once again, we like it when small government, when our local government, state and city governments and county governments are doing things to protect citizens. So yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Thank you for listening to Behind the Curtain Podcast, your real-world guide to real estate investment and property management. Be sure to subscribe at BehindTheCurtainPodcast.com. And if you'd like to learn more about Enterprise Property Management's real estate services, please visit us on the web at epmrealestate.com. This has been a Sound Ideas Group production for Enterprise Property Management, Inc.